Throughout the Quran, we find stories concerning some of the nations that came before us and how they were destroyed. Despite the difference in location and prophet, we find that they all tend to follow a similar sequence of events leading up to their destruction. Oftentimes, what happens is a nation or people go astray from the truth, and so Allah Azza wa Jal sends prophets in order to guide them back to the straight path. Due to a combination of arrogance, ignorance, and preference of the dunya over the akhirah, they disbelieve in, reject, and in many cases even go so far as to threaten and kill those prophets. Once they cross this threshold, if He chooses to, Allah can forgive them and guide them. If not, He seals their hearts and causes them to increase in their evil and transgressing ways, and then without warning, He destroys them. And so we find that the progression of events culminating in the destruction of a people can generally be sequenced into three stages: the corruption of the society, their subsequent rejection of their prophets, and finally their complete destruction by Allah. No nation was ever destroyed without first being sent a human being like themselves who spoke to them clearly in their own language. The Quran states in Surah Isra, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا, nor do we ever punish until we have sent a messenger. Every prophet and messenger that was sent by Allah instructed their people to fear Him and worship Him alone without any partners. If they listened and obeyed, Allah blessed them in this world for some time. If, however, they rejected the message for whatever reason, then we find in the Quran narrations detailing the fates of those who rejected the truth. The first messenger to be sent to mankind was Nuh alayhi salam. According to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, after Adam alayhi salam died, 10 successive generations passed who all worshipped Allah and held on to the concept of Tawheed. The story goes that towards the end of this period, there were some righteous men who passed away. These men were respected in the community and had been known for their good character. Their names were Wad, Suwa, Yaguth, Ya'uq, and Nasra. It is narrated by Ibn Abbas that the names of the idols formerly belonged to some pious men of the people of Noah, and when they died, Satan inspired their people to prepare and place idols at the places where they used to sit, and to call those idols by their names. The people did so, but the idols were not worshipped until those people who initiated them had died, and the origin of the idols had become obscure, whereupon people began worshipping them. And so Allah sent Nuh alayhi salam as the first ever messenger to mankind to call his people back to the worship of Allah alone. Prophet Nuh called his people for 950 years. Subhanallah, he was a paragon of patience, discipline, and tawakkul in Allah. He was the first messenger sent to the first people to commit shirk. For nearly a millennia, he firmly persisted in his efforts despite the persecution he faced. He called his people during the day and at night, openly and in private, at their businesses and gatherings, in the streets and at their homes, publicly and behind doors. He exhausted all methods. And how did his people respond? He was mocked, insulted, threatened, and boycotted. The chiefs among his people said, "We see that you are clearly misguided." They said, "If you do not stop, O Nuh, you will be among the stoned." And they said, "Do not give up your gods, do not give up Wad or Suwa or Yaguth, Ya'uq, or Nasr." They said, "O Nuh, you have argued with us and argued much. Now bring upon us what you threaten us with, if you are truthful." Each generation would instruct the next to reject the message of Nuh. This resulted in the situation worsening over time because rejection became a matter of heritage. Anytime Nuh would urge them to implore Allah for forgiveness, they would stick their finger in their ears to block his words and pull their clothes away from him as if he had some illness. Finally, after calling them to Allah for literally hundreds of years with little to no success, Nuh alayhi salam made dua against his people.
وقال نوح رب لا تذر على الأرض من الكافرين ديارا.
And Nuh said, "My Lord, do not leave a single disbeliever on the earth." Allah Azza wa Jal commanded Nuh alayhi salam to build an ark, a type of ship with no sails and no steering mechanism. وَيَصْنَعُ الْفُلْكَ وَكُلَّمَا مَرَّ عَلَيْهِ مَلَأٌ مِّن قَوْمِهِ سَخِرُوا مِنْهُ. Allah taught Nuh how to build the ark, and as he was constructing it, the chiefs of his people would mock him as they passed. Once the ship was finished, Nuh alayhi salam was commanded to load 2 of every animal on the ship, as well as the few people who believed in his message. And then came the decree of Allah. The same sky under which previously the chiefs of Nuh's people had mocked and rejected him broke open with a torrential downpour. فَفَتَحْنَا أَبْوَابَ السَّمَاءِ بِمَاءٍ مُنْهَمِرٍ وَفَجَّرْنَا الْأَرْضَ الْعُيُونًا فَالْتَقَى الْمَاءُ عَلَى أَمْرٍ قَدْ قُدِرَ. Then we opened the gates of the heaven with rain pouring down, and caused the earth to burst with springs, and the waters met for a matter already predestined. Subhanallah, prior to this, Nuh had promised his people that if they stopped their sin and asked Allah for forgiveness, يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا, Allah would continuously bless them with beneficial showers of rain. But now the sky was sent upon them not as a blessing, but as a punishment. While this was happening, Allah commanded the earth to open, and large amounts of water gushed forth, massive flooding from below and massive flooding from above. We can barely begin to imagine how massive the water was. وَهِيَ تَجْرِي بِهِمْ فِي مَوْجٍ كَالْجِبَالِ. The flood was so massive in scale that Allah Azza wa Jal compared the size of the waves to mountains. It goes without saying that the only thing keeping the ship intact and afloat was the mercy of Allah. With the advent of the flood, the few believers who believed in Nuh were saved, and those who disbelieved were drowned. فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَأَنْجَيْنَاهُ وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ فِي الْفُلْكِ وَأَغْرَقْنَا الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا قَوْمًا عَمِينَ. But they denied him, so we saved him and those who were with him in the ship, and we drowned those who denied our signs. Indeed, they were a blind people. According to Sheikh Ibn Kathir, Ad was the name of a tribe that existed after the flood of Nuh alayhi salam and before the time of Prophet Ibrahim, still very far back in human history. They were among those considered the pure or original Arabs, along with other tribes such as Thamud, Jurhum, Qahtan, Imlak, Jadis, and others. Allah Azza wa Jal granted them immense physical size. By our standards, they were giants. Due to their size and strength, they were very powerful in battle and capable in architecture. However, they were the first people to commit shirk after the flood, so Allah Azza wa Jal sent them a prophet from among them by the name of Hud, who was consequently the first of the Arab prophets. The problem with the tribe of Ad was that they were filled with hubris, which was an intense form of pride. Allah informs us of this hubris in Surah Fussilat, فَأَمَّا عَادٌ فَاسْتَكْبَرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ وَقَالُوا مَنْ أَشَدُّ مِنَّا قُوَّةً أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَنَّ اللَّهَ الَّذِي خَلَقَهُمْ هُوَ أَشَدُّ مِنْهُمْ قُوَّةً وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يَجْحَدُونَ. As for Ad, they acted arrogantly throughout the land with no right, and said, "Who is superior to us in might?" Did they not see that Allah who created them was far superior to them in might, and they persisted in denying our signs. Due to their immense size and strength, military might, and agricultural abundance, they began to see themselves as all-powerful. Along with shirk, this was their defining flaw. Only Allah Azza wa Jal is all-powerful. We find that when a people adopts kibr as their dogma, excess becomes their custom. Their prophet Hud admonished them for their extravagance, saying to them, أَتَبْنُونَ بِكُلِّ رِيعٍ آيَةً تَعْبَثُونَ. Do you build a monument on every height for vanity's sake? وَتَتَّخِذُونَ مَصَانِعَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَخْلُدُونَ. And you construct fortresses hoping to live forever. وَإِذَا بَطَشْتُمْ بَطَشْتُمْ جَبَّارِينَ. And when you strike mercilessly. They used to build monuments on the hills and high places to show off, with no intention of inhabiting them. They built the houses on a large scale which far exceeded what they needed, and when they would go to war, they would mercilessly annihilate their enemies. Prophet Hud alayhi salam called them to fear Allah and worship Him alone, as well as show gratitude for the favors bestowed upon them. He promised them that, يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيَزِدُكُمْ قُوَّةً إِلَىٰ قُوَّتِكُمْ. Allah would bless them with rain pouring from the sky and increase their strength on top of what they already possessed. In response to this, his people accused Hud of being Safaha, a weak-minded liar. They challenged his authenticity as a prophet, demanding that he bring forth the punishment of Allah or some clear evidence to prove his prophethood. They refused to abandon their idol worship, and even claimed that their gods had afflicted Hud alayhi salam with madness. They disbelieved in his warnings, his promises, his status as a prophet, the akhirah, and literally everything he told them. Finally, Prophet Hud made dua to Allah for help, saying, قَالَ رَبِّ انصُرْنِي بِمَا كَذَّبُونَ. My Lord, help me because they have denied me. And so after some time, the decree of Allah came to pass. Sheikh ibn Kathir relates that the destruction of Ad started with a severe drought. Not a single drop of rain fell, and being in the middle of a desert, they were soon afflicted by famine. After some time, dark clouds began to gather in the sky, and when the people saw this approaching their valley, they began to celebrate, saying, هَذَا عَارِضٌ مُمْطِرُنَا. Subhanallah, in order to somewhat grasp the severity of the adhab that was unleashed upon Ad, we have to keep in mind how massive in size they were. They were so powerful they built fortresses on mountaintops for fun. Despite this, Allah says about them, وَأَمَّا عَادٌ فَأُهْلِكُوا بِرِيحٍ صَرْصَرٍ عَاتِيَةٍ. According to Ibn Kathir, Allah Azza wa Jal unleashed upon them a ferocious wind that was so destructive, it would snatch one of them high into the sky, and then they would plummet to the earth, smashing their heads into pieces and leaving their bodies lying on the ground. Describing their headless corpses, Allah Azza wa Jal says, فَتَرَى الْقَوْمَ فِيهَا سَرْعَى كَأَنَّهُمْ أَعْجَازُ نَخْلٍ خَاوِيَةٍ. You would have seen the people lying dead like trunks of uprooted palm trees. They would have tried to seek shelter in their buildings, but there was nowhere they could hide. تَنْزِعُ النَّاسَ كَأَنَّهُمْ أَعْجَازُ نَخْلٍ مُنْقَعِرٍ. Extracting the people as if they were trunks of palm trees uprooted. How long were they made to suffer this torment? An hour, a few hours, a full day? سَخَّرَهَا عَلَيْهِمْ سَبْعَ لَيَالٍ وَثَمَانِيَةَ أَيَّامٍ حُسُومًا. Allah subjected them to this punishment minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day, for 7 days and 8 nights. It was relentless. Subhanallah, not too long ago, these were the same people who walked arrogantly on the earth, claiming that none was stronger than them. Allah Azza wa Jal stripped them of their undeserving pride, and the giants of Ad who used to walk arrogantly on the earth found themselves flailing helplessly in the sky before plummeting to their deaths. At the end of the 8th night, not a single person was left alive. تُدَمِّرُ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ بِأَمْرِ رَبِّهَا فَأَصْبَحُوا لَا يُرَى إِلَّا مَسَاكِنُهُمْ. It destroyed everything by the command of its Lord, and when the morning came, nothing could be seen except the ruins of their homes. And in another ayah, وَحَاقَ بِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا بِهِ يَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. Ad was wiped from the face of the earth so completely that they were forgotten in history. Like many other nations that came before them, they used to mock their prophet and dismiss the warnings against incurring the wrath of Allah. And so Allah tells us, they were surrounded by that which they used to ridicule. Thamud was a tribe that lived in ancient Arabia after the time of Ad. After they began to worship idols, Allah Azza wa Jal sent to them a prophet from among them named Salih. Salih alayhi salam called his people to stop their worship of idols and to return to Allah in repentance and gratitude for the blessings He bestowed upon them. He told them, وَاذْكُرُوا إِذْ جَعَلَكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ مِنْ بَعْدِ عَادٍ وَبَوَّأَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ تَتَّخِذُونَ مِنْ سُهُولِهَا قُصُورًا وَتَنْحِتُونَ الْجِبَالَ بُيُوتًا فَاذْكُرُوا آلَاءَ اللَّهِ وَلَا تَعْثَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ مُفْسِدِينَ. And remember when He made you successors after Ad and established you in the land. You build for yourselves mansions on its plains and carve out dwellings in the mountains. So remember Allah's favors and do not walk the earth as corruptors. وَكَانُوا يَنْحِتُونَ مِنَ الْجِبَالِ بُيُوتًا آمِنِينَ. Concerning this verse, Sheikh ibn Kathir commented, it is said that the ages of the people of Thamud were very long. They would build a house from mud, and their houses would fall apart before they died. That is why they carved out houses from stones in the mountains. In Surah Ash-Shu'ara, we find a summation of Prophet Salih's message to his people.
كذبت ثمود المرسلين إذ قال لهم أخوهم صالح ألا تتقون إني لكم رسول أمين فاتقوا الله وأطيعون وما أسألكم عليه من أجر إن أجري إلا على رب العالمين.
The people of Thamud rejected the messengers. When their prophet Salih said to them, will you not fear Allah? I am truly a trustworthy messenger to you. So fear Allah and obey me. I do not ask you for any reward for this message. My reward is only from the Lord of all worlds.
أتتركون فيما هاهنا آمنين في جنات وعيون وزروع ونخل طلعها هضيم وتنحتون من الجبال بيوتا فارهين فاتقوا الله وأطيعون ولا تطيعوا أمر المسرفين الذين يفسدون في الأرض ولا يصلحون.
Do you think you will be left secure in what you have here, amid gardens and springs, and crops and palm trees loaded with tender fruit, to carve homes in the mountains with great skill? So fear Allah and obey me, and do not follow the command of the transgressors, who spread corruption throughout the land, never setting things right. So how did Thamud respond to this? What was their reaction when Salih, the one who grew up among them and held a position of respect in the society, began calling them to leave their idols and worship Allah alone?
قالوا إنما أنت من المسحرين ما أنت إلا بشر مثلنا فأت بآية إن كنت من الصادقين.
They responded by saying he was bewitched and he had no authority or credence over them because he was only a human being like themselves. The chiefs of the disbelievers went to the lower class among Salih's followers and questioned their intelligence, saying, أَتَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّ صَالِحًا مُرْسَلٌ مِّن رَبِّي? Do you know for sure that Salih is sent from his Lord? The believers replied, قَالُوا إِنَّا بِمَا أُرْسِلَ بِهِ مُؤْمِنُونَ. It's interesting that the chiefs questioned them concerning the status of Salih as a prophet, but the believers affirmed their belief in his message. As for those who are blinded by pride and ignorance, Allah makes them blind so that all they see is what is in front of them. That's why even though he was appealing to their sense of reason, they kept discrediting Prophet Salih, saying, "You're just a man like us." Meanwhile, they were bowing down to statues of dead men. Eventually, they challenged Salih alayhi salam to produce a miracle, saying, "You are nothing but a man like us, so bring forth a sign if you are among the truthful." Sheikh ibn Kathir states, exegetes have mentioned that Thamud gathered one day in their assembly, and the Prophet Salih came to them and invited them to the path of Allah. He admonished them and cautioned them of the consequences of their rejection. They said to him, "If you could only produce from this rock a she-camel with certain characteristics." Then he stood up and offered prayers and asked Allah to respond to their demand. Allah commanded that particular rock to produce a she-camel with the qualities which they described. After this happened, Salih told them the camel would have a day in which only she could drink water from the well of the city, and on that day nobody else was allowed to fetch water. On another day, the water would be for them only. The camel was miraculous in nature, and because of its large size, it produced enough milk for everyone to drink. However, their Prophet gave them a stark warning.
قال هذه ناقة لها شرب ولكم شرب يوم معلوم ولا تمسوها بسوء فيأخذكم عذاب يوم عظيم.
Things continued like this for a period of time, but eventually the chiefs of the city began to plot. They came to a unanimous decision to break the covenant they had made and to kill the she-camel. Among the most evil and morally corrupt among them, 9 men decided to carry out the act. According to Ibn Kathir, it is mentioned that when they hamstrung the she-camel, the first one who attacked was a man named Qidar bin Salif, may Allah curse him. He slew her and she fell to the ground. Then all of them rushed forward, cutting her into pieces. When her calf saw this, it fled from there and went on to the peak of a mountain and howled 3 times. This is why Salih said to them, "Enjoy yourselves in your homes for 3 days." Thamud rejected their prophets, then they demanded a miracle, then they broke their covenant and killed that which they asked for, and so the decree of Allah came into effect upon them. The same group that killed the she-camel then plotted to kill Salih alayhi salam, dispose of his body in the same place the camel was killed, and swore that they had no idea what happened. Ibn Kathir states that Allah sent upon this specific group a stone which crushed them and killed them. On the morning of the first day, the faces of the people of Thamud turned pale. When evening came, they began joking, saying, "One day of the deadline has passed." On the morning of the second day, their faces turned red. In the evening, they called to one another, saying, 2 days have passed. On the third day, their faces turned black, and in the evening they said, the third day has passed. Their faces were changing color, and they were joking. Like their hearts, their fate was sealed. The story goes that on the morning of the fourth day, they put on perfume and sat in their homes in anticipation, waiting to see what would happen. Subhanallah, when the sun rose, Allah unleashed upon them a sayha, a ferocious sound which is described as a shout or a blast from the sky. At the same time, they were struck by a violent shaking of the earth under their feet. Every single person was killed in an instant and left squatting lifeless in their homes. Thamud rejected their prophet, killed the she-camel, which was the sign they demanded, and then plotted to kill Salih alayhi salam. And so Allah Azza wa Jal dealt with them accordingly, as if they had never lived there. Surely Thamud denied their Lord, so away with Thamud. Prophet Lut was the nephew of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the only one who believed in him and migrated with him out of their city. Allah Azza wa Jal sent Lut alayhi salam to the people of a city by the name of Sodom. When he came to them, he found them committing all sorts of evil. They controlled one of the trade highways, and when a caravan would pass, they would attack, murder, rob, or kidnap the travelers. The worst crime that they committed, however, was the act of homosexuality. They would kidnap and sodomize the travelers, and they would openly have sexual intercourse in their public meetings. This was never done before in the history of humanity. Lut alayhi salam tried to put a stop to this despicable and heinous act by warning them of the gravity of their crimes. وَلُوطًا إِذْ قَالَ لِقَوْمِهِ إِنَّكُمْ لَتَأْتُونَ الْفَاحِشَةَ مَا سَبَقَكُمْ بِهَا مِنْ أَحَدٍ مِنَ الْعَالَمِينَ. And Lut, when he said to his people, "You are committing an obscenity not committed by anyone before you in the world. You approach men with sexual desire and cut off the highway and commit lewdness in your gatherings." He questioned them further.
أتأتون الذكران من العالمين وتذرون ما خلق لكم ربكم من أزواجكم بل أنتم قوم عادون.
Do you approach the males of the world and forsake the wives your Lord created for you? Indeed, you are a transgressing people. What was the response of his people? What reason could they possibly have for rejecting Lut and continuing to engage in their evil and immoral practices? فَمَا كَانَ جَوَابَ قَوْمِهِ إِلَّا أَنْ قَالُوا ائْتِنَا بِعَذَابِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنْتَ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. But his people's only response was to say, "Bring Allah's punishment upon us if you are truthful." فَمَا كَانَ جَوَابَ قَوْمِهِ إِلَّا أَنْ قَالُوا أَخْرِجُوا آلَ لُوطٍ مِّنْ قَرْيَتِكُمْ إِنَّهُمْ أُنَاسٌ يَتَطَهَّرُونَ. But his people's only response was to say, "Expel Lot's family from your town, they are purest people." In other words, they had no argument to base their rejection on. As they were the first to commit the sin of homosexuality, they could not argue that their sick behavior was tradition. And so their only response was to call for Prophet Lut's expulsion as well as to challenge him with bringing the punishment of Allah. Ibn Kathir relates that the destruction of the people of Lut alayhi salam happened as such. Allah sent 3 angels to destroy the city. When the angels came to Lut alayhi salam, he was working on his land. They asked him to host them, and he felt embarrassed to refuse their request. He walked in front of them to his house and tried to give them hints that they should turn back from this town and go to another one. He said to them, "By Allah, I had never come to know such wicked people on the face of this earth as the people of this town." Then he went on for a while. He repeated that again until he said it to them 4 times. Qatada said, "Those angels were instructed not to destroy them until their prophet witnessed against them." When they reached his house, and the wife of Lut, who was a disbeliever, saw her husband with 3 handsome men, she ran to the people of the town and informed them of their arrival. And his people came rushing to him, and before this they had been doing evil deeds. He said, "O my people, these are my daughters, they are pure for you. So fear Allah, and do not disgrace me concerning my guests. Is there not among you a man of reason?" According to Ibn Kathir, the opinion of Mujahid, Sa'id ibn Jubair, Ibn Ishaq, Suddi, and Qatada is that Lut alayhi salam was referring to the women in the city as his daughters, because the prophets were fathers of their nations. However, the men of that city were so entrenched in their desires that they replied, قالوا لقد علمت ما لنا في بناتك من حق وإنك لتعلم ما نريد. They said, "You have already known that we have not concerning your daughters any claim, and indeed you know what we want." According to Sheikh ibn Kathir, scholars of the text said, Prophet Lut was pushing them back from entering the house while the door was closed, but they were intent on entering. Lut was admonishing them from behind the door, and when it seemed to be a difficult task to hold them back, he said, "Would that I had the power to set you right, or I could find some strong support for refuge." The angels then said, "O Lut, we are messengers of your Lord. By no means shall they reach you." It is mentioned that Jibril came out to them and hit their faces with his wing, and so they were blinded. It is said their eyes disappeared completely without any trace. They went back with the support of walls, threatening him with severe consequences. Allah Azza wa Jal informs us of how he dealt with them. In the morning they were hit with the sayha, the same name given to the deafening blast which fell upon the people of Thamud. Then the city was entirely flipped upside down, and then brimstone was rained upon them. So when our command came, we made the highest part its lowest, and rained upon them stones of layered hard clay, marked from your Lord, and Allah's punishment is not from the wrongdoers very far. Ibn Kathir states, "It is said that Jibril uprooted the city from the earth as well as those around it. There were altogether 7 cities with its inhabitants and animals. He lifted them to the sky and then threw it upside down and rained upon them brimstone hard as baked clay, layer upon layer." Sijil in the Arabic version means immensely solid and strong, and mandud means one following another. Musawwamatan denotes that every stone was marked with the name of its target upon whom it would fall. The destruction of the people of Lut was so complete that the area where they inhabited is now called the Dead Sea. It is the lowest place on the face of the earth, and the water is filled with salt, so nothing can live inside it, and it is of no use or benefit to any creature. According to Ibn Kathir, the people of Madyan were Arabs who lived in their city called Madyan, which was close to the Syrian borders, not far from the Dead Sea. The people of Madyan were disbelievers who cut off the highway, frightened the wayfarers, and worshipped Al-Aika, which was a thicket tree. They were people of evil behavior and cheated in their measurement and weight. They dealt with people with deficiency. When they bought something for themselves, they measured in excess, and when they sold something, they sold with deficiency. So Allah sent to them from among themselves a man called Shu'aib alayhi salam. He called them to the worship of Allah alone without associating any partners with Him. He forbade them from their evil and erroneous practice of cheating people in their measurement and weight, and that they should not frighten or rob people of their merchandise on their highways. And it is narrated by Ibn Abbas, they were tyrant people who used to lie in wait on the highway and lessen the value of people's merchandise by taking out a portion, and they were the first people to start this habit. Like all the prophets before him, Shu'aib alayhi salam instructed his people to worship Allah alone and to stop the evil that they were doing. We find the summation of his message and the response of his people in Surah Al-A'raf. Madyan we sent their brother Shu'aib. He said, "O my people, worship Allah. You have no deity other than Him. There has come to you clear evidence from your Lord, so fulfill the measure and weight, and do not deprive people of their due, and cause not corruption upon the earth after its reformation. That is better for you if you should be believers."
ولا تقعدوا بكل صراط توعدون وتصدون عن سبيل الله من آمن به وتبغونها عوجا واذكروا إذ كنتم قليلا فكثركم وانظروا كيف كان عاقبة المفسدين.
And do not sit on every path, threatening and averting from the way of Allah those who believe in Him, seeking to make it seem deviant. And remember when you were few and He increased you, and see how is the end of the corruptors. In the story of Shu'aib alayhi salam, there are some parallels with the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in that the message which they brought to their people was in direct opposition to corrupt practices which played a role in their economy. The people of Shu'aib made their wealth from robbing people on the road and cheating each other in business. Shu'aib alayhi salam called them to believe in Allah and to deal with one another with respect and fairness, thereby shifting their economic and social relations from one based on falsehood and oppression into one built on truth and justice. The people of Quraysh made a significant amount of wealth from travelers from all over Arabia who came to worship their idols at the Kaaba. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam called the people to abandon those false gods and worship Allah alone without associating any partners. Shu'aib alayhi salam tried to get his people to see that whatever they earned from lying and theft could never compare to what they earned from truth and fairness. There is no comparison between something which has been blessed by Allah and that which has no blessing. So how did his people respond? قالوا يا شعيب أصلاتك تأمرك أن نترك ما يعبد آباؤنا أو أن نفعل في أموالنا ما نشاء إنك لأنت الحليم الرشيد. They said, O Shu'aib, does your prayer command you that we should leave what our fathers worship or not do with our wealth what we please? Indeed, you are the forbearing, the discerning. قالوا يا شعيب ما نفقه كثيرا مما تقول وإنا لنراك فينا ضعيفا ولولا رهتك لرجمناك وما أنت علينا بعزيز. They said, O Shu'aib, we do not understand much of what you say, and indeed we consider you among us as weak, and if not for your family we would have stoned you to death, and you are not to us one respected. After working for some time to attempt to put an end to the corruption in the society, after having been ridiculed, denied, and threatened with expulsion and stoning, Shu'aib alayhi salam made dua to Allah for help. And so when the time came, the decree of Allah was passed on the people of Madyan. Sheikh ibn Kathir stated concerning the destruction of Madyan, Allah has inflicted upon them different kinds of punishments and adversities. They were first hit by a strong earthquake which made them fall lifeless, and then there was a tremendous blast, and then a shadowing gloom which brought upon them a shower of ashes and cinder. It is mentioned in this context that they were seized by a severe heat, and the wind stopped blowing for 7 days by Allah's permission. Neither any water cooled them, nor any shade relieved them from the heat. So they left for open places, and there came a cloud where they gathered underneath it. When they all gathered in that one place, Allah sent from that cloud sparks and a shower of ashes and cinders. And then the earth was shaken, and the blast came from the sky, and so they all fell lifeless. And so they all fell lifeless in their abodes. Those who did not believe in Shu'aib were as if they had never dwelt there.
ولو أن أهل القرى آمنوا واتقوا لفتحنا عليهم بركات من السماء والأرض ولكن كذبوا فأخذناهم بما كانوا يكسبون.